The war room was filled with tension. Commander Zixel stood before the holographic display, his 4 insect-like eyes scanning the red marks that covered the star map. Each red mark was a battle lost. Each one was thousands of lives gone forever. "Another fleet destroyed," said General Thyra, her crystalline body shimmering with anger. "That makes 3 in 2 weeks. The Korvath Empire is crushing us." Zixel clicked his mandibles together, a sign of frustration among his people. The Vrexi were known as great warriors, but even they were losing against the Korvath. The enemy was too strong, too many, and too ruthless. "What about reinforcements?" asked Ambassador Selen, his water-filled suit bubbling as he spoke. The Tethrans were peaceful by nature, but even they had joined this desperate war. "We have pulled every available ship," Zixel replied. "The humans have sent their forces too, but—" He did not finish the sentence. Everyone in the room knew what he meant. The humans were new to galactic society. They had only joined the Galactic Council 80 years ago. They were weak, their technology was basic, and their ships were small. They tried hard, but they were not enough to change the war. "The humans are enthusiastic, I will give them that," General Thera said with something like a smile. "But enthusiasm does not win wars. We need weapons, we need numbers, we need miracles." Old historian Krell shuffled forward. He was ancient even by Vrexi standards, his exoskeleton covered in the scars of 5 different wars. He rarely spoke at war councils anymore, but when he did, people listened. "Speaking of miracles," Krell said slowly, "has anyone told our new allies about the ghost ship?" Zixel turned to the old historian. "What ghost ship?" "Krell, we do not have time for stories." "Oh, but this is a human story," Krell replied, his eyes twinkling with something that might have been amusement. "I studied their history when they first joined us. They have many legends, but one caught my attention. They call it the Eternal Vigil." Ambassador Chen, the human representative, suddenly became very still. He had been quiet during the whole meeting, but now every eye turned to him. "It is nothing," Chen said carefully. "Just an old tale from our early days in space." "Tell us anyway," General Thyra commanded. "We could use something to lift our spirits, even if it is just a fairy tale," Krell continued, clearly enjoying himself. "According to the legend, when humanity first encountered hostile aliens 200 years ago, they were almost destroyed. They were weak, unprepared, and terrified, so they built a ship in secret. They called it the Eternal Vigil, and they poured everything they had into it. Every weapon, every technology, every desperate hope, and," Zixel asked, despite himself being curious. "And the ship disappeared," Krell said. "Some say it was destroyed in its first battle. Others say it never existed at all. But the humans whispered that it was out there somewhere, fighting battles beyond known space, waiting for the day humanity needed it most." The room fell silent for a moment. Then someone laughed. It started with General Thyra, then spread to others. "A doomsday weapon that disappeared?" Thyra said, her crystalline body vibrating with laughter. "Humans and their stories. They compensate for their short lives with big tales. Every young species does this," Selen added, though not unkindly. "They create myths to make themselves feel stronger. It is natural." Zixel looked at Ambassador Chen. The human's face was unreadable, showing neither anger at the mockery nor agreement with the legend. He simply sat there, calm and quiet. "Ambassador Chen," Zixel said, "is there any truth to this story?" Chen took a long moment before answering. "Every legend has some truth at its core, Commander. But right now we should focus on the real war in front of us." The meeting continued, but the mood had shifted slightly. The story had been a brief distraction from the grim reality they faced. Plans were made, strategies discussed, but everyone in that room knew the truth. They were losing. Over the next 3 weeks, the situation grew worse. The Korvath Empire was not just winning. They were destroying everything in their path. They did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. They simply conquered and killed. Zixel watched another battle report with growing horror. An entire civilian convoy had been wiped out. 30,000 lives gone in minutes. "How long until they reach the core worlds?" he asked his tactical officer. 2 months, maybe less. "They are moving faster than we predicted. 2 months. After that, billions would die. The Galactic Council, which had stood for 1,000 years, would fall, and there was nothing they could do to stop it." In his private quarters that night, Zixel could not sleep. He kept thinking about that stupid human legend, a magic ship that would appear when needed most. He almost laughed at himself for even remembering it. Fairy tales did not win wars. His communication panel beeped. An emergency signal. "Commander, you need to see this," his officer said, voice shaking. "The Korvath are launching their final offensive. Every ship they have. They are heading straight for the Sigma threshold." Zixel felt his blood run cold. The Sigma threshold was a cluster of 7 planets. Over 10 billion people lived there. If it fell, the war was over. "Mobilize everything," he ordered. "Every ship, every weapon, everyone who can fight. We make our stand there." Within hours, the Galactic Council had issued a desperate call across all of known space. Every species, every government, every military force that could help was begged to come. The message was simple and terrible. This is our last stand. If we fall here, we all fall. The human fleet arrived first. It was small, only 16 ships, but they came at full speed, ready to fight and die if needed. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo, their commander, met with Zixel on his flagship. "We are grateful you came," Zixel said honestly. "I know your fleet is small, but every ship matters now." "We will do what we can," Okonkwo replied. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. Humanity does not abandon its allies. As she turned to leave, Zixel could not help himself. "Admiral, may I ask you something?" "Of course. That legend, the ghost ship, the Eternal Vigil, is there any truth to it?" Admiral Okonkwo stopped. For a long moment she did not move. Then she looked back at him, and there was something in her eyes. Not amusement. Not mockery. Something else entirely. "Commander," she said slowly, "what do you really know about human fairy tales?" "That they are stories for children," Zixel replied. "Perhaps," Okonkwo said, "but in human fairy tales there is always truth hidden beneath the fantasy. Always." She left before he could ask what she meant. The next day, sensors detected the Korvath fleet. 400 warships, the largest force ever assembled in galactic history, came out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. At their center was the Extinction Dawn, a dreadnought so massive it had its own gravity field. Zixel looked at his own forces. 150 ships, many of them damaged from earlier battles. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and out of miracles. "All ships," he broadcast, "prepare for battle. Today we fight for everything we love. Today we hold the line." As the two fleets moved toward each other, Zixel allowed himself one last thought about that human legend. He wished, just for a moment, that fairy tales could be real. He would soon discover they could. The first shots of the battle lit up the darkness of space like a deadly fireworks show. Plasma bolts and missiles streaked between the two fleets, and ships began to die. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo watched from the bridge of her flagship, the UHNS Defiant. It was one of the largest ships in the human fleet, but compared to the Korvath vessels, it looked like a child's toy. Her hands gripped the armrests of her command chair, but her voice stayed calm. "All human vessels, Delta formation. Target their cruiser line. Fire when ready." Her 16 ships moved like a school of fish, quick and coordinated. They fired their railguns and missiles, focusing all their firepower on a single Korvath cruiser. The enemy ship's shields flickered, then failed. Explosions rippled across its hull. "Target destroyed," her tactical officer reported. "Good," Okonkwo said. "Pick the next one." But for every enemy ship they destroyed, 10 more remained. The Korvath fleet moved forward like a metal tide, unstoppable and merciless. The Council ships fought bravely, but they were dying. A Vrexy destroyer exploded to her left. A Tethran carrier lost power and began drifting, helpless. "Admiral, we are receiving heavy casualties," her communication officer said. "The Luminary Third Fleet has lost half its ships. They are requesting support. Send the Vancouver and the Tokyo," Okonkwo ordered, "and tell them to hold their position." She knew it was hopeless. They all knew it. But humans had learned long ago that sometimes you fought not because you could win, but because surrender was unthinkable. Her private communication panel lit up. A direct transmission from Earth, coded at the highest level. She switched it on. "Admiral Okonkwo," the voice of Fleet Admiral Richard said, "you are authorized to implement Protocol Fairy Tale. Hold your position for 72 hours. Help is coming." Okonkwo felt something she had not felt in years. "Hope." "Confirmed, sir. We will hold." The transmission ended. She sat back in her chair, and for the first time in days she smiled. Her bridge crew noticed immediately. "Admiral?" her first officer asked, confused. "Is everything all right?" "Better than all right, Commander," she said. "Tell the fleet to dig in. We just need to hold for 3 days." "3 days?" "Admiral, I do not think we have 3 hours." We will have 3 days, she said firmly. Trust me, Commander Zixel was not having a good day. His flagship had taken damage, his shields were at 40%, and he had just watched another 12 ships die in a coordinated Korvath strike. The enemy was pushing them back, forcing the Council fleet into a tighter and tighter defensive sphere. We cannot hold, General Thyra shouted over the communication link. We need to retreat. Retreat to where? Zixel shot back. Behind us are 7 planets and 10 billion people. There is nowhere to go. His tactical display showed the ugly truth. They had been fighting for 36 hours. They had lost half their fleet. The Korvath were preparing their final push, and when it came, nothing would stop them. He opened a channel to Admiral Okonkwo. The human ships were still fighting, still moving with that strange confidence. It made no sense. Admiral, we are dying out here, he said, not caring if he sounded desperate. I need to know, what are you hiding? Okonkwo appeared on his screen. She looked tired. Her uniform was dirty with smoke and sweat, but she was still smiling that strange smile. Commander, tell me something, she said. How much do you really know about human fairy tales? What? Admiral, this is not the time. They always have truth at their core, she continued as if he had not spoken. Every fairy tale, every legend, every story we tell our children, there is always truth hidden inside. Admiral, I do not understand. You will, she said. Very soon. Just hold your position for another 36 hours. The communication ended before he could respond. Zixel wanted to scream in frustration, but another explosion rocked his ship and he had to focus on survival. The hours crawled by. The Council fleet pulled back to their final defensive line, a sphere formation around the most inner planet. It was a formation of desperation. Once they were pushed from here, there was nothing left. The Korvath knew it too. They circled like predators preparing for the killing blow. All ships, this is Emperor Vornash. A voice boomed across all communication channels. The Korvath leader himself was speaking. You have fought well, but you have lost. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick. Resist, and we will burn your world slowly. You have 1 hour to decide. No one answered. There would be no surrender. Not today. Not ever. Zixel checked his chronometer. 34 hours had passed since the battle began. If Okonkwo was telling the truth, they only needed to hold 2 more hours. But 2 hours seemed like an eternity. Commander, his sensor officer suddenly shouted, I am detecting a hyperspace signature. Korvath reinforcements? Zixel asked, his heart sinking. No, sir. It is coming from the opposite direction, from outside the system. And, Commander, the signature is massive. I have never seen anything this big. Every sensor in the fleet turned toward the edge of the system. Every screen showed the same impossible reading. Something enormous was about to drop out of hyperspace, something that made even the Korvath dreadnought look small. What is it? General Thyra demanded. What could be that large? Space itself seemed to tear open. A wound in reality, bleeding light and energy. And then, sliding out of hyperspace like a knife from its sheath, the ship appeared. It was a monster. 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapons from bow to stern. Its hull was dark gray, covered in scars and burn marks from countless battles. Whole sections looked like they had been destroyed and rebuilt multiple times. It was a ship that had been to war and back over and over again. And on its side, in letters that glowed with faint light, was its name. Eternal Vigil. The bridge of Zixel's flagship fell completely silent. Every eye stared at the impossible ship on their screens. It could not be real. It was a legend, a fairy tale, a story to make people feel better, but there it was. That is, General Thyra whispered. That is impossible. Our sensors show parts of that ship are over 200 years old. Admiral Okonkwo's voice came over the general channel, and Zixel could hear the pride in her words. All Council forces, this is Admiral Okonkwo. I would like to introduce you to the UHNS Eternal Vigil. The legend was never complete, Commander. The ship did not disappear. It was sent away. Sent away? Zixel managed to ask. Where? On a mission, Okonkwo replied. 200 years ago, after humanity's first contact war, we realized how weak we were, how unprepared, so we made a choice. We built the most powerful ship we could, crewed it with our best and bravest, and sent it beyond all known space. Why? Zixel asked, though he was beginning to understand. To fight, Okonkwo said simply. To find every hostile species, every dangerous enemy, every threat that existed beyond our borders. To battle them, learn from them, take their technology, and survive. To become the weapon we needed to be, and to return only when humanity called them home. 200 years, Zixel breathed. 200 years of constant war? Generations of war, Okonkwo confirmed. People born on that ship who never saw Earth. Families who lived and died in battle. All for this moment. The eternal vigil drifted forward slowly, its massive form blotting out the stars. Every weapon on its hull began to power up, glowing with deadly energy. A new voice came over the communication channel. It was young but carried weight beyond its years. Council Fleet, this is Captain Marcus Chen of the UHNS Eternal Vigil. Apologies for being late. We were pretty far out when we got the call. We are here now and we are ready to help. Emperor Vornash's voice cut through the channel, filled with rage. You think one ancient ship will change anything? I will crush it like I have crushed everything else. You are welcome to try, Captain Chen replied calmly. We have been away from home for a long time. We have missed a good fight. The Korvath Emperor screamed orders. 50 warships broke from their formation and charged toward the Eternal Vigil. 50 ships, each one deadly, each one armed with weapons that could crack planets. The human ship did not move. It waited, silent and still like a sleeping dragon that had just opened one eye. All batteries, Captain Chen said, his voice still perfectly calm. Free fire, target-rich environment. Make them count. The Eternal Vigil came alive, every weapon on its hull fired at once. Railguns, plasma cannons, missile batteries, and things that Zixil could not even identify. The darkness of space turned into pure light and fury, and the Korvath ships began to die. The first Korvath ship died in seconds. The Eternal Vigil's railguns punched through its shields like they were made of paper. The second ship tried to dodge, but 3 missiles tracked it perfectly, hitting its reactor core. It exploded in a ball of blue fire. Commander Zixil watched in stunned silence as the massive human ship carved through the enemy formation like a blade through cloth. It was not just firepower, though the weapons were terrifying. It was the way the ship moved, the way it fought. Every shot was perfect. Every maneuver was exactly right. It fought like war was an art, and the crew had spent centuries perfecting it. Impossible, General Thyra whispered. No one fights like that. They do, Admiral Okonkwo said quietly. She was watching the battle with something like sadness in her eyes. When you have fought for 200 years, when you have faced enemies we cannot imagine, when you have lived your entire life preparing for war, you become something beyond normal soldiers. A Korvath destroyer tried to flank the Eternal Vigil, coming from above while its companions attacked from the front. The human ship did not hesitate. It fired thrusters and rotated in space, weapons tracking both threats at once. The destroyer was hit by a weapon Zixil had never seen before. Some kind of focused energy beam that seemed to phase through its shields entirely. The ship simply came apart, torn into pieces by forces he did not understand. What was that weapon? He asked. Phase disruptor, Okonkwo replied, taken from a species called the Zaltoth. The Eternal Vigil encountered them 90 years ago in the Outer Dark. They were extinct within a year, but the ship's crew learned everything they could first. Extinct? Zixil felt a chill run down his spine. The crew destroyed an entire species? The Zaltoth were slavers and murderers, Okonkwo said flatly. They made a habit of capturing colony ships and torturing everyone aboard for entertainment. The Eternal Vigil made them regret it. That is what the ship does, it finds monsters and destroys them. Another group of Korvath ships attacked. The Eternal Vigil deployed clouds of small objects that spread out in a sphere around it. When the enemy ships came close, the objects activated. Space itself seemed to twist and fold. 3 Korvath cruisers simply collapsed inward, crushed by artificial gravity fields that bent reality itself. Singularity mines, Okonkwo said before Zixil could ask. From the Zentari Collective. They were a machine intelligence that tried to wipe out all organic life. The Eternal Vigil proved them wrong. How many species has that ship encountered? Zixil asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Hundreds, Okonkwo replied. The crew kept detailed records. Hostile species, peaceful ones, extinct ones, and everything in between. Some they fought. Some they helped. Some they just observed and moved on. But they learned from all of them. The 50 Korvath ships that had attacked the Eternal Vigil were now down to 15. The rest were burning wreckage or vapor. The survivors tried to retreat, but the human ship pursued them with cold efficiency. None escaped. Emperor Vornash's voice boomed across all channels. Impossible. Nothing can fight like that. What are you? Captain Marcus Chen's reply was simple. We are what happens when humanity gets 200 years to learn how to kill things that want to kill us. We got very, very good at it. The Korvath fleet hesitated. For the first time in the war, they showed fear. They had thought themselves unstoppable. They had crushed 3 separate galactic fleets. But this single human ship had destroyed 50 of their best vessels in minutes. All council ships, Zixel broadcast, finding his voice again. Attack now, while they are confused.
For everyone who has fallen.
The council fleet surged forward with renewed energy. The appearance of the Eternal Vigil had changed everything. They were no longer fighting a hopeless battle. They were fighting alongside a legend made real. The human crew of the Eternal Vigil fought with mechanical precision. There was no wasted movement, no unnecessary communication. They had been doing this for so long that they moved like parts of the same machine. Captain Chen stood on his bridge watching multiple screens at once, calling out targets in a calm voice. Frigate cluster at Mark 37. Target their command ship first. Destroyer wing approaching from lower arc. Deploy counter missiles. Dreadnought is charging weapons. Prepare phase shields. His crew responded instantly. They ranged in age from teenagers to elderly, all wearing uniforms that looked old-fashioned by modern standards. These were people who had been born on this ship, raised on this ship, and would probably die on this ship. War was not something they did. It was who they were. Captain, his tactical officer said, "The Korvath dreadnought is moving to engage us directly." Chen allowed himself a small smile. Good. That is what we are here for. All power to forward shields. Load the heavy railguns with armor-piercing rounds. Let us show them what a real warship can do. The Extinction Dawn was the pride of the Korvath Empire. It was 3 kilometers long and mounted enough weapons to destroy entire fleets. Emperor Vornash himself commanded from its bridge, and he was furious. Bring that human ship down. He screamed at his crew. I do not care what it costs. Every ship support the Extinction Dawn. We will destroy this ghost together. 200 Korvath warships changed course, all moving to support their emperor's attack. They formed a massive battle formation, a wall of metal and weapons that filled space. Against any normal fleet, it would have been overwhelming. But the Eternal Vigil was not a normal ship. Captain, they are all coming at us, the sensor officer reported. I can see that, Chen replied calmly. Tell me, how long has it been since we fought something that actually challenged us? 73 days, sir. The Battle of the Burning Stars. Too long, Chen said with a slight smile. All crew, this is the captain. We are about to engage the entire Korvath fleet at once. Remember your training. Remember why we are here. And remember that every battle we win is one more day humanity survives. Make every shot count. The Eternal Vigil turned to face the incoming horde. Behind it, the Council fleet watched in amazement as the single human ship prepared to fight what should have been an impossible battle. They are insane, General Thyra said. No. Admiral Okonkwo replied quietly. They are the most sane people in this fight. They know exactly what they are doing. The distance closed. 1,000 kilometers. 500. 100. Then the Extinction Dawn fired every weapon it had, and the space between the 2 ships turned into a storm of death. The Eternal Vigil's shields flared as they absorbed the incredible amount of firepower. Colors rippled across the invisible barrier, blues and purples and shades that did not exist in nature. The shields were adaptive, changing their frequency and strength in response to each type of weapon. It was technology that should not exist, but it did because the Eternal Vigil had taken it from enemies defeated long ago. Shields holding at 60%, the defensive officer reported. They are hitting us with everything, but we can take it. Return fire, Chen ordered. Full spread. I want that dreadnought hurting. The Eternal Vigil's weapons blazed. Not just the standard railguns and missiles, but exotic weapons collected from 100 different battles, phase disruptors that ignored shields, plasma lances that burned through armor like butter, graviton beams that crushed hull sections, and the old reliable railguns firing metal slugs at a fraction of the speed of light. The Extinction Dawn's shields began to fail under the assault. Vornash watched in growing horror as systems started to go offline. His ship was the most powerful vessel in the Empire, and it was being torn apart. All ships concentrate fire on that human vessel, he screamed. Bring it down! The other Korvath ships added their firepower. The Eternal Vigil was now taking hits from over 100 different weapons at once. Parts of its hull began to glow red from the heat. Small explosions rippled across its surface as armor plates failed. Shield failure in sections 7 through 12. The defensive officer reported. Hull breach on deck 15. We are taking damage. Reroute power from non-essential systems, Chen ordered. His voice still had not changed, still calm, still controlled. Seal damaged sections. Continue firing. Admiral Okonkwo watched the battle with her heart in her throat. The Eternal Vigil was wounded now, bleeding atmosphere and fire into space, but it kept fighting, kept moving, kept striking back with everything it had. They cannot win, General Thera said. There are too many. Even that ship cannot stand against the entire fleet. Watch, Okonkwo said simply. The Eternal Vigil changed tactics. Instead of sitting still and trading blows, it began to move. It accelerated forward, straight into the heart of the Korvath formation. It fired thrusters in patterns that made it dance through space, dodging some attacks while absorbing others. And as it moved, it fired constantly, picking off enemy ships one by one. That is impossible, Zixel said. Nothing that large should be able to move like that. The crew has been practicing for 200 years, Okonkwo replied. Every single person on that ship knows their job perfectly. They have fought in every possible condition, against every possible enemy. This is just another Tuesday for them. The Eternal Vigil dove under the extinction dawn, so close their shields touched and sparked. At point-blank range, it fired every weapon on its upper hull directly into the dreadnought's exposed belly. The effect was devastating. The extinction dawn's shields collapsed like a broken window. The massive dreadnought shuddered as explosions ripped through its lower decks. Fire bloomed in the vacuum of space, quickly snuffed out, only to be replaced by more fire. The pride of the Korvath Empire was dying. Emperor Vornash grabbed the arms of his command chair as his bridge shook violently. Alarms screamed from every console. Half his crew was already dead or injured. His mighty ship, the vessel that had destroyed entire fleets, was being torn apart by a single human warship. All power to weapons, he screamed. If we die, we take them with us. But the Eternal Vigil was already moving away, sliding out from under the stricken dreadnought with the grace of a dancer. As it emerged, it fired one last salvo into the extinction dawn's exposed reactor core. The dreadnought exploded. Not all at once, but in a cascade of detonations that traveled through its entire length. The explosion was so bright that every ship in the system had to dim their view screens. When the light faded, the extinction dawn was gone. The Emperor was gone. The Korvath Empire's greatest weapon was nothing but debris. For a moment, the entire battlefield fell silent. Both sides seemed unable to believe what had just happened. Then the Korvath fleet broke. It started with one ship, a cruiser that turned and fled into hyperspace. Then another. Then 10, then 50. The Korvath had never known true defeat before. They had always been the stronger force, the unstoppable empire. But their emperor was dead, their greatest ship was destroyed, and this human vessel had done it all. They ran. All ships pursue, General Thera shouted triumphantly. Do not let them escape. But Commander Zixel raised his hand. No, let them go. We have won. That is enough. The Council ships held position as the Korvath fleet scattered and fled. Within minutes, the system was clear of enemy vessels. The battle was over. Zixel turned his attention to the Eternal Vigil. The human ship was drifting now, its engines dark. Whole sections of the hull were torn open, exposing corridors and rooms to vacuum. Small fires still burned in some areas. The ship looked like it had been through a war, which he supposed it had. Open a channel to the Eternal Vigil, he ordered. The communication screen flickered, showing Captain Marcus Chen. The young man's uniform was torn and burned. Blood ran down the side of his face from a cut above his eye. Behind him, the bridge was a scene of chaos. Sparking consoles, injured crew members being carried away, and smoke filling the air. Captain Chen, Zixel said, your ship is heavily damaged. Do you need assistance? Chen wiped the blood from his face and smiled tiredly. We have had worse, Commander. But yes, we could use some help with repairs, and medical teams if you have them. We lost a lot of good people today. They will be there immediately, Zixel promised. Captain, I do not have words. You saved us all. Your crew saved billions of lives. We did our job, Chen replied simply. It is what we were sent to do. Admiral Okonkwo's face appeared on the split screen. Marcus, it is good to see you alive. Your grandfather will be relieved. Chen's tired face brightened a bit. Grandfather is still alive. How is he? Old and stubborn like all Chen men, Okonkwo said with a slight smile. He is on his way here now. He wanted to see you the moment we received word that you were coming home. Home. Chen repeated softly, as if the word was foreign to him. We have been gone so long. I was not even born when the ship left Earth. None of my crew was. This is going to be strange. Zixel ordered his best rescue and repair teams to the Eternal Vigil immediately. As his ships approached the massive human vessel, he got his first real look at what 200 years of constant war had done to it. The ship was a patchwork of technologies. Some sections were smooth and modern, recently rebuilt. Others were scarred and ancient, bearing the marks of battles from decades ago. The hull was covered in small plaques and memorials, thousands of them, each one marking a crew member who had died in service. Council rescue teams boarded through the damaged sections. What they found inside amazed them. The Eternal Vigil was not just a warship. It was a city, a community, a home. There were gardens growing in the lower decks, providing food and air. Schools where children learned not just normal subjects but also tactics, engineering, and survival. Medical bays that doubled as nurseries. Recreation rooms with old movies and music from Earth, kept alive for generations who had never seen their homeworld. There were memorial halls with walls covered in names. 7 generations of crew members, all listed with their birth dates, death dates, and the battles they had died in. Over 10,000 names in total. Families who had served together, fought together, and died together. This is incredible, said Medical Officer Selen as he walked through the corridors with his team. These people built an entire society inside a warship. They had no choice, Admiral Okonkwo said. She had come aboard personally to help coordinate the rescue efforts. When the Eternal Vigil left Earth, everyone knew it might be gone for centuries. The crew had to be self-sufficient. They had to be able to survive, to maintain the ship, to continue the mission even as the original crew died and their children took over. How many crew members are there now? Zixel asked. He had joined the boarding party, curious to see this legendary ship with his own eyes. 3,000, Okonkwo replied, down from 4,000 when they left. They have fought 847 battles in 200 years. Every person on the ship has lost friends, family, loved ones, some multiple times. They found Captain Chen in the main bridge, directing repair efforts despite his injuries. His crew worked around him with practiced efficiency. No one seemed panicked or frightened. They simply did their jobs as they had done 1,000 times before. Captain, Zixel said as he approached, I must ask, how did you do it? How did you fight for so long without going mad, without giving up? Chen looked at him with eyes that seemed far older than his 45 years. Because we knew someday someone would need us. That was the promise made to the first crew, passed down to every generation. We would go out into the dark. We would fight monsters, we would become the weapon humanity needed, and when the call came, we would answer. Today we kept that promise. At great cost, Zixel observed, looking at the damage around them. War always costs, Chen replied quietly, but the cost of not fighting would have been greater. Your people would have died. Your worlds would have burned. We could not allow that. Ambassador Chen arrived several hours later on a fast courier ship. He was old now, his hair white, his face lined with age. But he moved quickly as he was escorted to the bridge of the Eternal Vigil. When he saw Captain Marcus Chen, he stopped. For a long moment, the two men just looked at each other. Then the old ambassador crossed the bridge and pulled his grandson into a hug. You came back, Ambassador Chen said, his voice thick with emotion. I promised I would, Marcus replied, returning the hug. Great-grandmother made me swear before she died. She said, no matter how long it takes, you bring this ship and its crew home. So here we are. Your great-grandmother would be proud, the ambassador said, pulling back to look at his grandson properly. She was the first captain, you know. She started this whole impossible mission, and now you have finished it. Not finished, Marcus corrected gently. Completed one mission, but there is always another war, always another threat. The Eternal Vigil and its crew will be ready when needed. Repairs continued through the night. The Council sent every resource they had to help fix the damaged human ship. It was the least they could do for the vessel that had saved them all. General Thera visited the ship personally to thank the crew. She found them in one of the memorial halls, holding a service for those who had died in battle. Over 300 crew members had been killed in the fight against the Korvath. Their names were being added to the wall, joining the thousands who had come before. "We will never forget what you have done," Thyra said to the assembled crew. "Your names will be remembered across the galaxy as the soldiers who saved us all." An older woman stepped forward. She had gray hair and carried herself with quiet dignity. "We do not need fame or recognition, General. We did what needed to be done. That is enough." "May I ask?" Thyra said carefully. "What will you do now? Will you return to Earth? Surely you have earned rest." The woman looked around at her fellow crew members. They ranged from children to elderly, all wearing the same old-fashioned uniforms, all bearing the same calm acceptance in their eyes. "Earth is our home," she said slowly. "But the eternal vigil is our life. We were born to fight, raised to protect. When the ship is repaired, we will do what we always do. We will go back out into the dark. We will find the next threat before it finds you. And when you need us again, we will answer the call." Zixil, who had been listening quietly, felt a chill run through him. These humans were not normal soldiers. They were something else entirely. Something humanity had created out of necessity and desperation. They were warriors born from 2 centuries of endless war, and they would never stop fighting because fighting was all they knew. "The galaxy is lucky," he said quietly. "That you are on our side," the woman smiled slightly. Yes, it is." 3 weeks after the battle, the Galactic Council held a ceremony in the Grand Hall of their central station. Representatives from every member species filled the massive chamber. Humans, Vrexi, Luminari, Tethrans, and dozens of others stood together, united by their recent victory and shared survival. Commander Zixil stood at the center podium, his voice carrying through the hall. "Today we honor those who saved us. The crew of the UHNS Eternal Vigil fought when we thought all was lost. They stood between us and destruction. They showed us that legends can become reality." Captain Marcus Chen stood with his senior officers near the front. They wore dress uniforms that looked clean and crisp, but Zixil could still see the tired weight in their eyes. Some wounds took longer to heal than others. The Council awarded humanity a permanent seat on the High Council, the first time in 2 centuries that a new species had been granted such an honor. They also granted the Eternal Vigil and its crew full access to Council technology and resources. Though, General Thyra added with a slight smile, "I suspect they already have most of our technology through other means." Laughter rippled through the hall. It was true. The Eternal Vigil's own collection of alien technology far exceeded what the Council possessed. 200 years of scavenging from defeated enemies had given the ship capabilities that no one else could match. After the ceremony, Zixil found Admiral Okonkwo standing by one of the large windows overlooking space. In the distance, the Eternal Vigil hung in orbit, still undergoing repairs. New hull plates were being installed, weapons were being recalibrated, and systems were being upgraded. "They will be leaving soon," Okonkwo said without looking at him. "So soon?" Zixil was surprised. "Their ship still needs work." "They can finish repairs while traveling," Okonkwo replied. "The crew is restless. They have been fighting for 200 years. Staying still makes them uncomfortable. They need to be out there, patrolling, watching for threats." Zixil was quiet for a moment, then asked the question that had been bothering him since the battle. "Admiral, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you think what humanity did was right? Sending that ship out for 2 centuries? Condemning generations of people to lives of constant war?" Okonkwo turned to look at him. Her expression was thoughtful, sad, but not regretful. "Was it right? I do not know. Was it necessary? Absolutely. When we first encountered hostile aliens, we were almost destroyed. We were weak, unprepared, and terrified. We had 2 choices: become strong enough to survive or die. We chose survival, but the cost was high," Okonkwo agreed. "Every person on that ship has paid a terrible price. But because of them, humanity survived. Because of them, billions of humans live in peace, never knowing how close we came to extinction. And now, because of them, your people survived too. Was it worth it? Ask the 10 billion people on those planets we saved." Zixil had no answer to that. Later that day, he visited the Eternal Vigil one last time before it departed. Captain Chen showed him through the ship personally, taking him to places the official tours had not covered. They walked through the schools where children learned mathematics alongside weapons training, through the gardens where food grew under artificial lights, through the memorial halls where generations of dead were remembered, through the engineering bays where impossible technologies were studied and improved. This ship is more than metal and weapons. Chen explained as they walked. It is our home, our history, our purpose. My great-grandmother helped build it. My grandmother commanded it through the War of the Burning Nebula. My mother died defending it against the Zaltoth, and now I command it. Someday my children will command it too. Does that not bother you? Zixel asked. That your children are destined for war before they are even born? Chen stopped and looked at him. Every species raises their children for something. Your people raise warriors. The Luminari raise artists and philosophers. The Tethrans raise peacekeepers. We raise protectors. Our children know exactly what they are born for, and they are proud of it. They carry on a legacy that has saved countless lives. They reached the bridge where the crew was preparing for departure. Chen gestured to the view screen which showed Earth in the distance, a blue-green planet that most of his crew had never visited. That is our home world, Chen said quietly. Beautiful, is it not? Most of my crew will never walk on its surface. They will live and die in space, fighting battles in places no one will ever hear about. But they do it so that planet and all the people on it can live in peace. That is what the eternal vigil represents. Sacrifice, protection, the willingness to stand between the monsters and the innocent. You are leaving Earth again, Zixil observed. Where will you go? Out, Chen replied simply. Beyond the borders, into the dark spaces where threats breed. We will find them before they find you. It is what we do. Will we see you again? Chen smiled slightly. When you need us. When another threat rises that you cannot handle alone. When the legends need to become real again. We will be there. They shook hands, human and Vrexy, warrior and warrior. Then Zixil left the ship and returned to his own vessel. Hours later, the Eternal Vigil powered up its engines. The massive ship turned slowly, orienting itself toward the edge of known space. Every council ship in the system stopped what they were doing to watch. This was history, the moment when the legend returned to the shadows. All ships, this is Captain Chen, his voice broadcast on open channels. Thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for the honor you have given us. But our work is not finished. There are still threats out there, still dangers that lurk beyond your borders. We will find them. We will fight them, and we will keep you safe. Until we meet again, Eternal Vigil, Zixil transmitted. May your weapons stay true and your crew stay safe. We appreciate that, Commander, Chen replied. But we have been at this for 200 years. I think we will be fine. The Eternal Vigil's engines flared bright blue. Then the ship jumped to hyperspace and was gone, leaving only a faint distortion in space where it had been. Commander Zixil stared at the empty space for a long time. Finally, Admiral Okonkwo's voice came through his personal communicator. Quite a sight, is it not? She said. Admiral, Zixil said slowly, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. I will try. Does humanity have any other secrets like this? Any other fairy tales that might turn out to be real? There was a long pause. When Okonkwo spoke again, he could hear the smile in her voice. Commander, humans have been telling stories for thousands of years. We have legends about ancient heroes, magical weapons, impossible victories, and monsters that lurk in the dark. Most of them are just stories meant to entertain or teach lessons. But not all of them. Another pause. Let me tell you something about humanity, Zixil. We are very good at two things, creating stories and making them come true. The Eternal Vigil was one story. There are others. Some are just tales. Some are possibilities. And a few are already real, waiting for the right moment to appear. That is not reassuring, Admiral. It is not meant to be, Okonkwo replied. But consider this, would you rather be our enemy or our ally? Ally, Zixil said immediately. Definitely ally. Good answer, Okonkwo said. Because we protect our allies, always, no matter what it costs. That is the one thing you can always count on with humanity. We remember our friends. The communication ended, leaving Zixil alone with his thoughts. He pulled up a report on his console, one that had just come to his attention. It was from Council Intelligence, compiled from various sources across human space. The report detailed rumors, half-confirmed sightings, and classified information about human military projects. There were mentions of 3 more ships similar to the Eternal Vigil under construction in hidden shipyards. There were whispers of autonomous warships that patrolled the edges of human space, attacking anything hostile without orders. There were stories of human special forces that operated beyond all known territories. dealing with threats before they could become problems. And at the bottom of the report, one line stood out. Recommendation: do not antagonize humanity. Their public military is formidable. Their hidden capabilities are unknown and possibly far more dangerous. Zixel closed the report and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Eternal Vigil was hunting. Somewhere out there, other human ships were doing the same. And somewhere in human space, more weapons were being prepared, more plans were being made, more legends were being crafted. He had asked Admiral Okonkwo if humanity had other fairy tales. He realized now that was the wrong question. The right question was, how many of those fairy tales were already real? And perhaps more importantly, did he really want to know the answer? In a hidden shipyard in the Oort cloud of the Sol system, 3 enormous ships rested in their construction cradles. Each one was 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapons powered by reactors that could run for centuries. They were nearly complete, perhaps 5 years from launch. Their names were already chosen: Eternal Vigil II, Eternal Vigil III, and Eternal Vigil IV. A human admiral stood on the observation deck, watching construction crews work on the massive vessels. She was young for an admiral, but her eyes held the same calculating intelligence that all successful military leaders possessed.